Hello everyone and welcome back to Let's Talk Trackmania for another weekly episode. We are back with episode 19 today and we are going to be talking about Trackmania Grandleague, as what everyone has been waiting for. No doubt everyone's known it's been playing up to this since we've been talking about it the last 10 months or so anyway. But we are here, we are finally back for a week again. It is Tuesday, it is Let's Talk Trackmania time. But I'm joined once again by our beautiful Turbo. Welcome back. Once again, there's that winning smile that caught everyone into the stream. But welcome everyone. I hope you're all doing fantastically. We are, of course, back once again. And as I said, this episode is going to be primarily focused on the Trackmania Grandleague, of course, the playoffs experiment, how the playoffs then happened. Of course, we're talking about the playoffs that just happened that Sunday previous. So just a fair warning for anyone who is there. Spoiler alert, we will be talking about results. We will be talking about each of the results as to who went out where and, how the tournament then came out overall. So just if anyone hasn't watched it yet, you better go and do that now. Before we end up ruining everything for you. But before we get underway and before I ask this beautiful man how he is, just a reminder, this podcast is brought to you by esac.gg, of course. Take a look on it. Of course, the links will be available. But esac.gg is where all the tournaments are going to be held nowadays. So, of course, CPS just started off. I suppose we can talk a little bit about that later if we've got time, as well as upcoming full speed tournaments. And if you're interested in hosting a tournament yourself, definitely check it out. But the most important question of the week, how's Turbo?
The most important question. All right. That's a nice introduction. Actually, I'm okay today. I have a little bit of a headache, but nothing can hold me back from doing this podcast here. My study has started and I had a burger beforehand. So yeah, Ooh. I can only be good when I see your face. So yeah, so I'm good. What about you, Scotty?
I'm spectabulous. What can I say? It's a great day to be back talking about Trackmania. I'm being joined by my special guest. It's a happy day. But yeah, I'm happy. We had a lot of Trackmania to deal with the last weekend. Of course, CPS starting off, Trackmania Grandleague over the weekend. There's been a lot to talk about, and I always enjoy when we come into an episode and we're not just kind of pulling a subject out of our ass, so to speak. There's definitely been a lot to talk about recently, and I'm happy enough to get started. But I feel, as we've been saying, the only fair way to get started on this is Trackmania Grandleague overall. Now, I've been talking without breathing for about a good minute or so. So, Turbo, would you care to give us an idea of what was happening going into Trackmania Grandleague? Where were we pre-Sunday?
So, before this Sunday, we were actually left with 8 players who have qualified throughout this regular season. So we had 6 steps beforehand. I think I guess that most of you have watched it, but you can see the players here on your side. We have Grandco Junior, Pack, Papu, Afi, Spam, Aurel, and Kappa, which are the respective results actually. And we also had a spicy prize pool of 7,500 euro in that. But we didn't have your normal double elimination brackets or something like that we've had in the past. We had something called the finalist mode or anything like that. So for me, at first, they changed something in the rulebook. So I had an older version. So I had wrong information because the player who could have picked the first map was actually Gwen and not Papu, if I recall that one correctly, because they swapped it out. But I mean, I was discussing with them. But it's a very interesting format. And actually, it went out quite nicely. So I can briefly explain like that. You have 5 of those TMGL maps, right? You have 5 of them. Mm-hmm. You're going to play them in 2 lappers. So you don't have the 6 laps, you have 2 laps. In this finalist mode, you either want to get first or nothing. So if you get first, you activate the finalist mode and you have to win one more round in order to advance. But of course, if you get second all the time, which you have mentioned in the podcast previously, you're not going to make it, right? So you need to get first in order to claim yourself the finalist mode. And then you need to win one more round. And then from those 8 players that you see on your screen, only the top 6 will go through. And the next one, only the top 4. And then we have a final mode where it's a best of 3, a best of 5 on those tracks. So if you win 3 maps, you're going to make it. And it's again with this finalist mod. So it's very hard to actually explain it. You need to watch it.
Mm-hmm.
But Scotty, have you actually followed any of those streams, a recap or anything like that? What is your your opinion about that? Because now we have seen a full rotation from that. But it's kind of still a bit weird.
Well, I mean, first things first, what I think was the most important thing going into this, I remember when Trackmania Grandleague came out initially, a lot of people were very, they had a lot to say about it. A lot of people were very critical of it. But it was one of the things which me personally, which I felt was the same with this format, I needed to try it, or I needed to see it happen before I could really formulate my full opinion on it. I mean, on paper, I didn't really think it was as exciting. Well, I think it would have been an exciting format, but not one I would have really wanted, so to speak. But yeah, I needed to see it, as you've explained the format to everyone there. I needed to see it in action to really be able to think whether or not I would want to see this sort of tournament format coming back. And of course, we have had the full playoffs were held on the Sunday there, as of course it all came within, I believe it's about 3 hours or something like that. The playoffs came under. And as exactly you've been saying there, it was essentially the test of who was able to hold their mettle for lap after lap, not necessarily in the consistency side of things, but this time looking out for sheer pace, looking out for who would be able to set the fastest times on each two-lapper, and who would come out on top from risking it as much as they could. And me personally, going into this, I think a feeling which a lot of people could have shared is that going into this, the one reason why I was feeling a bit more interested in it was because I had no idea who was going to win. And that wasn't because I don't know who's the better player. I mean, I feel like I could reliably, put in order which players I think are the fastest, which players I think are the most consistent. But even still, when you put up all of those numbers together, it's very, very difficult to actually be able to tell who would actually win overall. And I think that really showed with some quite surprising results here and there. Overall, the result may not have been as surprising, but some little rounds here and there where certainly people may not have expected the results as much. So going into it, I was interested to see how this kind of experiment would work, so to speak, because it is essentially an experiment. I mean, this is a brand new format that, well, with the exception of, I think, the Game World Cup, which held a kind of pseudo edition sort of like this, but this is at least on a larger scale with more talented players, with very much more prepared players. And I think I don't really know if it's something, as I said, I would like to see again, but I think it's only fair we kind of talk through how the actual tournament came out in terms of results and so on. I understand your man started off on fire, if I remember right.
Yeah, I mean, Peck, there was the map called Paradise. Maybe you guys remember this track with this 270 ice identity where to slide up, and then you just either like flip your car or you go very far up and just gather a lot of speed. And you know what Peck decided to do in the first 2 rounds? He just won 2 of them and he was through. And then on the other hand, we had Spam winning the 3rd round and going out, right? Going out. He was sitting on finalist the whole time. And then there was someone like Afi who just completely popped it on, I think, the second to last map. So, I mean, Peck was definitely very strong. And after that performance, he was one of my favorites. But a thing that Speedy said to me is that, I mean, Peck was sitting there for like a solid 40 minutes or 30 minutes and just waited till the match is over. And then he needs to wait. He's getting cold again. And I've actually seen players leaving the server beforehand. Not sure if that was allowed or not, or if they have maybe discussed that. But it's a format, you risk it out for 2 rounds, and the first couple of rounds felt so slow. Everyone had to get finalist. Everyone was finalist at some point in this first round. And then, it was very exciting. But till that part, it was like, okay, now this guy is getting finalist. Now this guy, what felt like only the excitement was built up, and it was very slowly built up, So that was my perception from that first round. Have you actually you have not casted it, right? But have you watched it as a viewer, or any experience that you have gotten, or have you only seen the results?
Well, I was on Discord with a few friends. We were watching it after having watched, I think Formula One was on the same day earlier on, but we sat on and we watched the Trackmania Grandleague playoffs as well, following, the CPS qualifiers, sorry, were just before it. So yeah, I was on with a few people who were playing the qualifiers for our team, but yeah, we had a lot of people on talking about it, and the impression I got, and the impression a lot of people got, was at least in the first stages, it was, you were kind of looking at it like the possible nightmare, with Pac going through in 2 rounds. You were looking at it the potential nightmare, and then I see Spam winning the next one, and I'm thinking it's all lining up. The two things which I said would be the worst things to happen is people just winning straight in 2 rounds, and people getting finalist and then not being able to win again just because it's, they're second placers or the third placers. That's just the way they play, which Spam has been very open throughout the years of his career, that he is not a player which typically gets first places at the top events. He's a player which will have his consistency rewarded with high points finishes. But I mean, that when it started off like that, I was like, oh no. I was worried for players like Aurel, worried for players like Afi, who have their bread and butter as their consistency. And I was glad to see at the very least Aurel and Afi managed to make it through. But for those who didn't manage to catch on to it, almost everyone was finalist at one point, if I remember correctly, apart from Pac, who got through. I think Kappa was one of the last people to get finalist, if I remember correctly. And coincidentally, Kappa and Spam were the ones to actually drop out immediately. So again, for any who are not familiar, once you get finalist and once you win your round, you will essentially secure your position in the next stage. However, starting with 8 players, only 6 players would then make it to the next stage. And then from 6, only 4 would make it. From 4, only 2, and so on and so forth. Now, I was very surprised to see Kappa going out. I thought he was one of the players who really, really could kind of hang it out on a format like this. Is this Eric Oldal I'm sitting here with? Oh, I called it. All of this.
I mean, no, Eric was saying to me, imagine saying that Kappa will go off first rounds, and I was right with that. I mean, that was my gut feeling. I know that Kappa is not slow, but I mean, at this point, I was seeing, okay, Pac was going through. Afi had the comeback of the century, but also Gwen was struggling. But sorry, I interrupted you. So, yeah.
Well, yeah, you're right in saying that. I mean, Gwen was certainly struggling the first round, and I was surprised to see some of these players struggling. Sorry, as Parheeling corrected me, was Carl Jr. getting finalist second to last as well. Yes. And it was coming into this round 1, and I'm thinking, this isn't right. These people are championship level players, and we mean not only players who would qualify to playoffs, players who are capable of winning playoffs were severely struggling in this format. As we're saying, players like Carl Jr. were struggling. Kappa was struggling. Gwen was struggling, and those are, with the exception of the likes of Pac and Papu, 3 of the players which were earmarked to essentially be fighting for, top 4, never mind top 8. But yeah, coming out of phase 1, if we'll just call it that, Kappa had went out and Spam had went out. And then in phase 2, we didn't really have any obvious surprises in terms of people struggling, really, I would say. I forget exactly the order of which people then went through. However, it was it Papu?
Papu winning first, yeah.
Yeah, Papu winning first, and it was Aurel and Afi going out, if I remember correctly. Yeah. I know Afi went out, Aurel, and then the final 4 was Carl Jr., Gwen, Papu, and
Pac.
Yes. I keep forgetting all these names, but yeah. So one thing which I did start to notice the more these kind of playoffs went through, especially when we got into a final 6 or final 4, is it felt like we talk about TMWC 2018 as being one of our favourite tech matches of all time. And that's because everyone was so close together, it was so tight, everyone was at the top level and things like that. However, in this one, it felt like it was just a 2-car battle each time. There was one person who would be, half a second in front, something like that. And then everyone else, you would maybe have 1 or 2 people who would be, still maybe close enough to make a difference. And then the other 3 people have retired or something like that. That's one of the kind of drawbacks I found a lot about this. I think having 2 laps on maps, which, I mean, the thing is, Trackmania Grandleague maps aren't the hardest kinds of maps. Trackmania Grandleague maps are difficult because of how risky you need to take it in order to hit the best times. It's like, a TMM map, an easy tech map. It's not a difficult track, but you have to risk it a lot. You have to go very close to the walls.
Yeah.
You have to maximize the amount of time you're gaining, which makes the map more difficult because of how you need to drive it. So I don't think it's necessarily that a lot of these people were crashing because the maps were difficult. We've seen these people surviving 6 lappers without crashing. But we saw a lot of issues with a lot of players making a lot of mistakes. And as I'm saying, sometimes we didn't have anyone finishing these rounds cleanly on only 2 laps. Sometimes we have 1 player, sometimes we have 2 player. And that kind of left a little bit of a bitter taste in my mouth. The phrase that was coined with the people I was playing with listening in with is like, when everyone crashed, it was just like GG, go next. You knew who was going to win the round for the last 2 minutes or something like that. It was just a formality. Now, of course, in Trackmania, it's never a formality. Anyone can make a mistake at any moment, but that's kind of what it felt like.
Yeah, especially I remember on the first map, it was that in the second round or so, I think 4 or 5 players made mistakes and then just 3 insta DNF'd. And it was like a bit that the players had to adapt to this format. And also a map which really stick out to my mind when you spoke about falling behind was Halfpipe. I mean, you were seeing so many risky endings and people YOLOing it like crazy. It was looking so sick. And yeah, I mean, sometimes rounds were just decided just going into the second lap and it was a bit boring. But on the other hand, we had really, really close battles where players have overtaken just in the last chicane in this freewheel map. What was the name again of that? I forgot it. With the
Circles, maybe?
Circles, yeah, with the half-pipe jump, yeah. Where I think Afi or someone had more speed and overtook the other, or was it?
I seem to remember it being
Gwen?
Carl Jr. and Afi, but I can't remember who actually won.
Gwen and Carl Jr. maybe, or something like that. But yeah,
someone French.
Yes, so many things were going on, and from my perspective as a caster, it was super, super exhausting of casting 3 hours because you said we had a lot of very, very decided rounds, but on the other hand, we had really, really close rounds, and it was so hard for me to keep up the hype, and I was so exhausted after that cast. It was unbelievable, but it was a nice event. But yeah, it is also a bitter taste in my mouth. The question is, what would have been if this guy didn't crash or anything like that? You don't know that. But yeah, I think we won't find out. But this format is definitely something interesting. But I still prefer cup mode. Let's say it like that.
Yeah, I mean the time of which it most bothered me through Trackmania Grandleague was the final. In the final, of course, it was Gwen versus Carl Jr. For the crown, so to speak, and essentially it would just be one map would give you 1 point, basically. That was the way it was working out. And it especially frustrated me because there was only a few rounds where they were actually close. It just it seemed like whoever cracked first would then win the point. And that was when I suppose the GG go next meme really kind of went into full swing, when it would just be Carl Jr. would crash. And then the next round, Gwen would crash. It was just crash after crash after crash, it felt like. And, I mean, it's not necessarily calling out the players in any way for, they weren't good enough or something like that. But it's just the way you need to play in this sort of format. You don't get anything for second place. It's only first places that matter. So Hail Marys are getting thrown all the time. It's all or nothing. Everyone's putting everything on the line. So it's it's a format which the players definitely did need to adjust to, and evidently, of course, Carl Jr. did end up adjusting best and winning outright, as you know he always does. It seems like, but yeah, I mean, on my kind of thoughts of the tournament format overall, I understand you kind of summarise your feelings just a little bit there at the ending, but me personally, this reminds me of when we talk about the Trackmania Grandleague points argument. It's not an argument. It's not a format which is particularly competitive. It's a format which is tailored to a showcase. It's tailored to be cheap excitement, basically. Whereas with, I don't necessarily mean that in a bad way, but it's like, for example, the points loss. The points loss is meant to be exceedingly brutal, so you have no idea who's going to win it, no matter how well they play. It's kind of like the game show formula, so to speak, where they can look like Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, where they can answer 19 questions correctly, and then, answer the last one incorrectly, and then there you go, they've lost everything, That's kind of what it feels like they're trying to do with this. They're trying to give kind of the element of excitement just purely by what's at stake, so to speak, in the sense that, of course, through the points, that they could lose their points at any time, or that if they didn't get first, they would get nothing. It was in that sense a little bit of cheap excitement, in my opinion. But the thing is, it is excitement. That's one of the important parts for this. It still creates an atmosphere, or it still creates a need to watch it, because you don't know who's going to win it. Exactly as we were saying there, Carl Jr., who did eventually win, very much struggled in round number one. Gwen, who got second, struggled very much in round number one. Pac, who dominated, didn't even get into the final. It's very, very difficult to kind of sum up my feelings on it. However, it's always something I feel like I say quite a lot about Trackmania Grandleague. I understand a lot of people have been suggesting changes and suggesting this way it could change and that way it could change. It very much depends to me if they want to keep it this kind of format of excitement, so to speak. They want to kind of keep going for the kind of cheap excitement bits and do it that way, or whether they want to, have a more rewarding viewing experience, so to speak. They want, you're supporting your player who's performing very well, and they get what they deserve. Like as we talked about the Nightmare example, you had a player like Spam who got the finalist immediately, and then I can imagine, a lot of Spam supporters, including Spam, were tearing their hair out. Him either failing these rounds or getting very close to getting first place, but it's just not happening. No matter how well he plays, unless he gets first, that's him going to be out. His playoffs have came to 20 minutes long. It's what I feel is going to be a very divisive conversation about whether or not this format should be changed. Me as a pure competitor, I would always want to see a more competitive format. But I mean, overall, would you say that the Trackmania Grandleague playoffs I would say it was still entertaining. It was still exciting. Would you agree with me in that sense?
Yeah, of course. I will totally agree with you. And I thought that the length of the total format is definitely way shorter. I thought it's way, way shorter and not 3 hours. Because, I mean, we are going to the full length in the first on the first phase with everyone being finalists at some point. But, I mean, at this point, it's just a coin flip. Coincidentally, we can see that the top 4 that have qualified through the regular season to the actual steps are the top 4 in... and they went to the top 4 or into the second last phase together. But it could also have been like that Kaljina would have gone out in the first round. So I don't know. I'm not sure if this format really, it's good for a player, or it shows us that this player is the best player. That's my issue with that, because second place doesn't matter, and this is really, really crucial. I mean, Kappa and Spam going out in round number 1 because they just didn't have the pace. Pac, on the other hand, just won 2 rounds and was laughing probably when he finished the second round. And I'm like, see ya in I don't know, 1 hour when you guys will fight for the other remaining places. It's super hard to tell, you guys. And definitely a cool format. I really like the fact that they tried it out, but I think a double elimination bracket really shows you if a player is better and worse. And there you can also make comebacks. You only have a limited, you can only have a limited amount of room to work with in this. If you make one mistake and you have to respawn, you're dead. If you make a small mistake, okay, you can get it with risking, but when you fail in cup mode, you will still get your 3 or 4 points. And this is a thing that is left aside now, and I find that really problematic.
Mm-hmm. I mean, here's the thing, right? I do like the fact that they tried to come in with something new. But what I would also say in this kind of sense, you need to start having some sort of consistency between what you're offering in your tournament.
Yeah.
Now, I mean that both in two ways. First of all, you have an entire league system that goes over 6 weeks, and it prioritizes consistency over the course of 6 maps. And then you get to a playoff stage where the players who have made it have been the most consistent, and now they're getting asked to play a completely different style. They're being asked to, go all or nothing, so to speak. They're being asked to risk as much as they can, which I don't necessarily like that. I don't necessarily like tournaments at the same tournaments, demanding different things from the players. That's not really something I think is the best idea. I would rather see it, a format which does reward consistency, say a cup mode format, for example, or, Giants Cup when they experimented with just rounds and the points you then got from those rounds. I definitely think there was options there, but both consistency in the sense where we've had a season 1 and a season 2 with completely different playoff formats, completely unrecognizable from each other. First one we had, round format on one lappers, where it was a cup mode. You had to get points per round, then get up to a certain total, get finalist, and then win your finalist round. Whereas this time we of course have the format that we've just discussed. It's a completely different ball game from each of the different playoff formats. Like not necessarily to say it 100%, but I'd imagine if you replayed this final 100 times in the cup mode format, you're going to have the same player winning more often in cup mode, whereas you're going to have a much more varied result on the format which we've just seen. I definitely think that's fair to say. If you obviously we're not going to play 100 times, but you know what I mean.
I see what you do there. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's someone like Kappa or Spam could win there as well, probably. Mm-hmm. So it's like it's not, redeeming or demanding, let's say this word, consistency. It's only the risk you take, and you can have a bad day. We've seen Jr. crashing in the first 2 turns somewhere, and when do we see that? It was so weird. You can't really see how players are pushing it. I was like, what is happening? The round is already decided. Can we skip the round and go to the next one? And then we're just waiting that someone will make a mistake, but hey, they're so cooled down that they won't make a mistake eventually. So I don't know. It's like it's more for the viewers, as you said, and not for the players itself.
Mm-hmm. One thing I would suggest also, if there's any, of course, Nadeo members listening, is first and foremost, I do like the attempt at innovation, so to speak. Not that I'm saying it's a successful or a failure or anything like that, but one thing I would suggest going forward, and I think a few people would agree with me here. Your biggest stage of your biggest tournament is not the place to be throwing out something new that's never been tried before. What I would see as a perfect candidate to throw something like this in is a combine. The combine will have a great deal of attention to it. It will have well-trained players, and you can factor it in as, say, another step within the combine. You can have it like, say, whoever gets first gets X amount of points for it or whatever. But this way you can see if it works. You can see the positives or negatives to it without having exposed your maximum audience to it, without having exposed your most influential players to it. And I think that's Well, of course, getting a full 3 hours of this and a combine's not going to be possible, but you can at the very least streamline that format pretty easily, in some different sort of fashions. If it was a one lapper, for example, or doing it with the different amount of players and things like that. But I mean, what I kind of think for that is that I don't think the playoffs of the biggest tournament and that Nadal runs is the place to be experimenting with things, to be honest. I think maybe the beta season of Trackmania Grandleague would have been the place to be experimenting with things. But I think with Nadal then coming in with these other sort of tournaments that they're going to be hosting, like the World Cup coming next year, is there's many different options to be making sure if something works or not. And I think it's definitely because I think it's definitely important because we have seen this format being so divisive in the sense that not everyone does agree with it, but this would be an easier way for you to be able to see, right, at least we've tried it, at least we know if it works or not. Yeah, I would have liked to have seen a playtest before using the world's best players and the world's biggest stage in Trackmania as the guinea pigs, so to speak. But that's maybe a little bit of a stickler for me.
No, actually, it's a nice idea. I mean, this could add up something to the actual combine. I guess that this mode is in the combine as well, if I recall it correctly. I'm gonna check actually, but I think it's in the combine. But I mean, it you've mentioned it. It takes so long. It takes so long, and I'm not sure if players will actually play. Like, I think it is. Wait, actually, see here schedule. So we have the final mode. Yes, we have it on as the last one. So we have the knockout, the regular step, the time attack, and then the final mode. So we don't have a double elimination bracket. We have a final mode for that. So I think this will take very long again. And yeah, I mean, well, we're going to have the same mode, but I would also have preferred to see this final mode in the combine at first. Because there you can see the advantages and disadvantages. You have 3 things before that, and then you can see, okay, will this kind of fit? Let's say, I don't know, Muda or someone like that is first and going out in the first round. That would be like, okay, something is not correct here. Like that you were saying that we have 100 times, or we would have repeated this 100 times, we would have had different results almost every time, and yeah, I don't know. But we're going to see also in the combine how it will work out. This is, I think, going to influence the decision if they're going to keep it in the 3rd season. And yeah, but on the other hand, what I have to say, and also have to praise the players, they were all super no-lived and performed super well. Because it's so hard to really push it against them. But like the top 4, even the top 8, they were so good, just to say that.
Mm-hmm. For sure, yeah, they were all very performing very well, but I do feel also that the environment of which they were kind of being asked to perform is almost an impossible environment to consistently perform well. Having been asked to go, for first place every round against the very best players in the world, you don't get any better than players like Carl Jr. and Pac and Kappa and Spam and so on. You have essentially the best of every sort of environment of Trackmania. You have the fastest players, you have the most consistent players, you have the most well-rounded players. They were all there, with very, very small exceptions, like maybe Tween also being one of the fastest players, or maybe Riolu or Scrappy being the most well-rounded, but very, very small exceptions to there being the best players there was in the playoffs. But I mean, overall, I do like the format and I would like to see it return, but I don't think it has a place in the playoffs. I think there needs to be some sort of format which is going to will not necessarily be more recognisable, because I suppose more recognisable doesn't matter as much, but I do definitely think that it's very important for your showpiece or your event, so to speak, your marquee event, that the best player wins. That's as simply as how I look at it. The player who performs best throughout the whole event should then win the tournament, in my opinion. I wouldn't even be averse to seeing the combine format being the playoffs. The combine, has been a very kind of fresh and innovative format at deciding who gets placings. I thought it was very interesting for
I like this one
last season. So, I mean, that's definitely something to think about as well. And you can throw in these little twists. You can play it over 2 days. I mean, the beautiful thing about having no LAN events at the moment is you essentially have all the time in the world. You don't have to worry about whether you can book a stage at ESWC or you know, whether or not you'll be able to go to this event or something like that. You can, you know, split this over how many days, how many weeks you want. Of course, within reason, but I mean, there's nothing stopping them from splitting the playoffs over, you know, a certain amount of time. They would need to have the right format, because I mean, you don't want it that fucking Carl Jr.'s won already and then going into the next day, he just doesn't need to show up, you know. But like, there's a lot of things which I think need to go back to the drawing board on this. I think the playoffs format needs to go back to the drawing board. It needs to be, but we'll sit down, we'll think what's the best way to do this. We'll think what kind of feedback have we got. What have people said did they enjoy? What have people said they didn't enjoy? And just kind of take it from there and come back and see what happens next time. But I think with the players having originally came out and said, you know, with their letter that they don't like the idea of this format, we were seeing players in different stream chats being, other Trackmania Grandleague players being visibly bored of the format. They didn't like it. They weren't supporting it.
Yes.
I think it's definitely something which the players are going to be looking very much for it to be changed. And with it being so divisive, it's resulting in roughly a 50-50 split, whether people like the new format, whether they would prefer something else. So there's a demand, basically, for either party. So I'll be very interested to see what happens next season, but I want something to have changed. Not necessarily do they need to change the whole format, but they need to change the format in such a way which addresses some of the concerns people have put forward. Either it took so long, or that, you know, the two lappers maybe didn't fit because people were making so many mistakes. I think there's a lot of refining that can be done if they do want to continue on with this format. But I mean, with all the kind of pressure that they've had over the last few weeks and months, what kind of changes do you think, if any, we'll see for this?
I mean, we are always complaining about formats, and we always have our fingers pointed on them. I think it's a nice. Oh, the cat is alive. Look at that. She's hello.
That's because I moved. No doubt.
But yeah, you know, we are always complaining. So I don't know. It's a cool invention of this format. But I think that we should go back to the normal thing, because this is, I've already said that like so many times. It's a meta change, and we cannot say, okay, now the most consistent player is going through, and then the most risky player and the maybe even most luckiest player is going to win. Because I mean, I just remember that Peck had the opportunity of going into the next round, and I think could have knocked out Gwen actually. But he failed the last jump, and then also it was Papu overtaking him in this last identity on halfpipe. It was, and so you know, Papu was very unlucky, and he looked very prepared for this. And then also, like, it's so map dependent as well. I mean, we didn't know what would have happened when this and this map would have come up and something like this. So you know, there are so many factors that you need to consider, and you need to like determine if the winner should be like the most consistent, the fastest, you know, this and this. I don't know, but we're always complaining. But I would just go back to the double elimination bracket, just from my point of view, because it's just better. And then also a player can have a little bit of a breather when he knows, okay, you know, if I'm going to make a mistake, it's fine. Yeah, you know, it's fine to like make a mistake and not be completely dead and be pressurized all the time, because I cannot imagine what a player like Afi would have thought. in this whole process, and then it went down to the wire, denying both of them, and then he went eventually through, knocking out Kappa and Spam and not winning a round before that. It must be such a pressurous situation. And also for Spam, on the other hand, he was winning round number 3, was like, okay, only you need to win one more round, and then he gets like, gets 7th and not made it into the next round. So it's a weird format, definitely something interesting, which I like to see, but not on the final stage. Not on the final stage. In the combine, it should be nice. It should be very nice, but not as the 4th step. So I would still want to see a double elimination bracket, and then also as the last chance, something like you can completely risk it here and show your balls, as the 5th one. That we have like a little bit more of a consistency thingy in there with 5 instead of 4 disciplines.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, I think the summary of the how Trackmania Grandleague is then came out overall is I think some people were kind of left feeling a little bit confused. Definitely, it had been an entertaining final, coming down to Gwen and Carl Jr. essentially, going the full best of 5. I think the final was good, but I think a lot of the feelings people have had is that the final could have been better in some ways, or could have been more engaging or something like that. But there's definitely some positives to the final, I think is very fair to say. But one of the things which has been a little bit of a talking point from one very particular member of the community, formerly, of course, part of Let's Talk Trackmania, Mr. Holdall, is the preparation going up to Trackmania Grandleague, and I wanted to get your thoughts on this. Eirik had made it a particular point as he was very frustrated with how this event was being handled communication-wise. I believe he'd put up a number of polls and a number of reminders, so to speak, as it seemed to be, in his opinion, that not a lot of people actually knew the exact date, or more specifically, the exact time of the playoffs. It seemed to be that a lot of people were giving maybe different answers, or they had different information. Not everyone seemed to be sure when and where, specifically when the final was going to be held, and it seemed to be that was a point which he was going to be that he focused on quite a lot. I saw him putting quite a bit of feedback in the Trackmania Grandleague Discord, which was also responded to by Softy. But do you have any kind of position on that argument at all? Do you agree with Eirik that there was definitely maybe some more efforts and communication needed, or do you see it that more enough had been done, so to speak?
No, I definitely agree with Eric there, because I mean the rubric got changed like 100 times. I have the feeling about. First thing, so when I streamed last week, I think it was on Thursday, I was like, yeah, guys, you know what cast to watch there and there, and they were like, what? Huh? What, a cast? Huh? There's an event going on this weekend. And I was like, I'm in the game right now to know where which event is, also thanks to the podcast, because they just like think about all the things. And I think that a lot of people didn't know. I mean, they made their posts on Twitter, but I think not everyone is in use of, or is like checking Twitter regularly. But I really like the fact that a pro player has described the map, but it could have been a bit more, like some people maybe just doing it. Everyone in the Trackmania Discord wasn't there. I'm not sure actually about that, but I don't know what they could have done differently. Well, okay, there was no at everyone from there, I think, but why is it actually like that? And also, I think, maybe I have an explanation for that. I mean, they've changed the rulebook like 10 times. I think the first set date was in January or something like that for the actual live event, or for the playoffs, or something like that. But they changed it so many times, and they need to make like a root or like a change log or something like that. Also, the actual where was that, in like who can pick which map in this thingy here. So with the final 6, it was something else, that map 4 is random and stuff like that, and they changed that one as well throughout the process. Maybe they thought about that, but I don't know. It's a bit weird that most of the people didn't know, but I think it's caused because they just changed the date in the rulebook maybe once or something like that.
I mean, I think Eric's primary complaint was what he perceived to be a lack of communication through Twitter. I believe he mentioned that only one tweet had been made through Trackmania and Ubisoft Connect, whereas there hadn't been much done from the official Ubisoft channel, so to speak, and not much more done from Trackmania closer to the event. Maybe a reminder, maybe some sort of promotional material and a countdown, I think he was looking for. But I think Eric definitely sets his standards very high when it comes on to communication, and it has definitely been something that he's been very critical of Nadal for quite some time, even when he was back onto the podcast with ourselves, which I'd definitely say he is. It's definitely something he would have been paying a lot more attention to, and he would have noticed a lot more. So I don't feel it's fair as me to comment on as much. I could only say that if there was a lack of communication, then I would definitely be pointing it out myself as well. I said that I hadn't keeping an eye on it as much, but I think communication is very important, especially for an event which there wasn't as much promotional build-up as far as I had seen in terms of. I did see map showcases, which were very nice. I had seen some content on it. However, of course, I'm at least somewhat engaged in loading up the game every now and then. I can understand that some people may not have had all of the information they were looking for. But I mean, it's not something, as I said, I feel I can comment too much on. I don't know exactly how much was communicated. I don't know exactly when it was communicated, if that was the problem. Say, for example, that the right amount of content was there, but it wasn't at the right time, and so on and so forth. But I mean, I think overall, when we talk about the playoffs, it has been it's been a good playoffs. I'm not going to say it's been an especially great playoff or it's been fantastic. It's been bad. It's been insignificant. It's not been anything. I'd just say it's been a good playoff. There's been some issues. There's been some good points. It's still been exciting. It's even with the communication issues, which some people were complaining about, and the format issues. I think it was still a good playoffs. I could still watch it. I was still enjoying myself when I was watching it, even if some places were, some things were a little bit frustrating. But is it? Give me your kind of overall opinion. Start to finish of the playoffs, the aftermath. How are you kind of feeling about it?
Yeah, I was feeling good as well. I mean, we had our top 4 was the top 4 from the prior standing. But they were also, like, for me, on paper, they were the fastest players, maybe like Afi as well. But, I mean, so many close decisions that were, like, made by the players. And the final was actually super boring. Because you said it was the 1v1. But the round before that was so exciting. Just have to say that Grand Cow Jr., Peg, and Papu, they were betting out. That was probably, like, the best thing ever. But this just shows me that you need a final with 4 players instead of 2. But eventually we had a very, very good evening in Trackmania. I mean, you guys are probably thinking, why they are talking like that, and are they, like, not happy about that? But no, I think it's the opposite. This format has proven to work out. I mean, it worked out like that, but it could have been someone else that could have won as well. I mean, in the end of the day, it is about coping the pressure and everything like that. But I think it was very nice. Just the final was a bit meh, and the first round was a bit too long for the players even. But yeah, it was cool. But yeah, I mean, there was a question by Phoebe. Maybe I can just answer that because she was asking if the player would have deserved it when he goes through that from Combine to TMGL. Yeah, I mean, I would not just test it on the big stage. That was the thing I was pointing out. And having 5 instead of 4 disciplines, it is like more of an average then that you have between those things. And then you can argue, okay, we're testing here how consistent you are. We can test how much you can cope the pressure and something like that. So you have other things that come as a professional gamer that you bring with yourself that you are eligible of playing in the Trackmania Grandleague. I think it just an idea to test it there instead of testing it for the creme de la creme, that was just the idea that Scotty and me had. But I guess I definitely see your argument there. But it was a nice evening, and I don't know what is better now. Do you think you really want to have a double elimination bracket back against Super Bad? Or would you be fine with having season 3 also with this kind of format as the playoff phase?
I mean, me personally, I think both will entertain to an extent, but me as a competitor, as I said, I'm always going to want to see something more competitive. I'm always going to want to have a situation where the players are rewarded, on their skill. And I definitely agree that Fabi does make a great point there in a sense that it does sound contradictory when we say it would be fine for the Combine. However, when it is supposed to be that the Combine is as serious as the playoffs, so to speak, and that it does kind of contradict with what we were saying. Just to give my 2 cents onto that, so to speak. The issue I then have with the Combine itself and how with that overall, it is something I've spoke about before, that I feel that you can kind of go in with experiments, and you can kind of you do have more room to maneuver and things like this. However, what I feel more stops you being able to have that little bit more flexibility in the Combine is that the Combine essentially wants to have the 2 best players getting into Trackmania Grandleague. However, it's not solely focused on having the best players in Trackmania Grandleague. Now, I would just kind of point out a little bit of a difference between that. And what I mean by that is you may have Trackmania Grandleague players going down into the Combine who may not be as good as some other players who are then in the Combine. However, they may keep their place in Trackmania Grandleague ahead of some others as a result of the way the Combine selection is made, in the sense that only 2 people would then go up as long as they actually beat 2 other Trackmania Grandleague people. The worst case scenario, so to speak, being that Trackmania Grandleague gets absolutely rinsed by Open Grandleague, and then you have top 8 OGL and bottom 8 Trackmania Grandleague, in the sense that only 2 of them still would go through. Even some of the Trackmania Grandleague players who are finishing, 14th, 13th, 12th, they're still going to be able to get into Trackmania Grandleague by virtue of how the format works. I mean, that they've, say example, Massa's just announced his contract with Berlin International Gaming, so his spot's safe as long as he doesn't get bottom 2.
Indeed.
But that was something we more spoke about last time. But that was why I felt that there was more room for experimentation in the Combine, is that, well, of course, through a full 4-step format, you would more than likely then have the best player coming out on top, regardless of what kind of hoops they have to jump through this different, maybe you throw in a more kind of lucky, so to speak, stage, so to speak, like what some people were saying that this playoff format was like. Maybe you throw in something like that, and it does shake up the results a little bit. However, the problem then comes is if you have the best player, say he's first, second, or something like that, and then he has a poor result in this final step, and then he drops down to 3rd or 4th in the Combine, the way I see it, he should go through, whether he's 3rd or 4th, instead of if he's just 1st or 2nd. But the way the Combine is formatted, he won't get through because he is 3rd or 4th. Out of 16 players, when 8 people go through. Just simply with that last line, I'd certainly agree it is very complicated, but I think the Combine will, to be honest, that's one of my main gripes with the current system, but I don't think we've got enough time in the year left for me to talk my heart out about that. But was there any other questions you'd kind of picked up on at all?
Right now, not. But I mean, you named a point there which I really find important, and it's the point that, let's say Massa is P14 and he just performed shit. Let's just say like that, but he's still gonna stay in Trackmania Grandleague because he is, having a contract, and I think, we talked about the system so many times, but I mean, in general, this whole thing, there could be someone being 4th, an OGL player not qualifying, it is a weird format, and I think the issue with that is the exclusivity of the Trackmania Grandleague that there are limited 16 spots and that there's not a second league or something like that. I still have this idea that there should be a second league with 10% of the total prize pool, and that players are playing for that as well. You know, it will also get some interest, and we can see some upcoming maybe stars, players like Granadi, or also like Razi, or some other players, some Frenchies, you know, Legu, Glass, Dofold, you name them, all of them, Super Kaluf, Muda, they could have played in that one. But I don't know. It will get super complex then also with the combine and stuff like that, because I really like that combine. But yeah, I think, the OGL should not be an experiment, but you should also not test that when there is a prize pool of 7,500 euro involved. I think that's also something that, is a bit, of course, players have their contract and everything like that. But I think if we would have played that once, if we play that one thing once more, we would have not have the same result, you know? And this is like a thing that is really weird for me, that to see that this can eventually be random. But yeah, I don't know. Yeah. It is a weird thing, and I think there's no right and wrong, because you can also be unlucky in a triple final situation.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's one of those things that I definitely agree, and I think the Open Grand League shouldn't then be an experiment. But if anything, I think that supports more the fact that if you don't want Open Grand League to be an experiment, then certainly the final stage of your most your upper echelons of Open Grand League certainly shouldn't be an experiment. I think, if anything, that makes it a little bit worse, so to speak. Shall we say, it puts a bigger spotlight in a kind of, you've got a lot more risk there when, as I said, you do have maximum exposure. You do have, all eyes who could be possibly scrutineering this are there, which I think's the part that, which makes me think that it should have been experimented with on a smaller scale before being implemented through whatever means of which they did wish to do it. But I mean, I like I've said, overall, I did think I did enjoy the competition. I feel I enjoyed the competition just more because I enjoy competitions. And in general, I'm always happy to see a big event kind of coming round and things like that. I may have disagreed with some of the parts on it, but I suppose now is a kind of sense where we look forward into what's coming next, and that is, of course, Combine. That is going to be the Combine to decide who gets to then stay in Trackmania Grand League and who then will have to then go through Open Grand League once again. I mean, personally, I'm looking forward to it. Of course, hopefully I will be casting it, actually, but I'm not going to talk too much about that just in case I'm wrong. But yeah, it's going to be much the kind of same format, as I understand, as last season, with the small changes we're seeing through the format. But essentially, we're still going to have the same question of who eventually is going to be going in and going out. But of course, coming into this, people weren't sure exactly how it was going to work, but of course the rulebook has clarified. It will be exactly the same in the sense that a maximum of 2 Open Grand League players can get guaranteed spots. So of course, to guarantee those spots, they would need to beat at least one member of Trackmania Grand League each. So essentially, they'd need to, basically get top 8. That's as far as I understand it. Also, only the 2 Trackmania Grand League players that they then defeat would then be eliminated from Trackmania Grand League, and then the remainder of the spots would then be made up with by virtue of the orgs deciding which players they wanted. So, of course, whatever orgs are then going to be involved in Trackmania Grand League will then be offered the choice of X amount of players, and then they will then decide from that group of players who they then wish to be in Trackmania Grand League. So that's essentially the format as I understand it. I mean, I've always kind of had my problems with that format, so to speak. It's always been a little bit of a stickler for me. It's not really something I like as much, but I'm not going to be a broken record. I'm going to be talking about all that again. I suppose it's a conversation we're always going to have, and no doubt we will have when the Combine is over. and we're speculating about who's going to be involved in the next season. But, I mean, kind of going into the Combine, I know we're going to talk a little bit more about it, especially next week, which will be, of course, the Combine will be on the 14th and 15th of November, gentlemen, so certainly mark your calendars there. But yeah, if you kind of get any early predictions for the Combine at all, any you think will go up or down?
Muda will go up, Matt will go down, and the other spots. I mean, we have Tween, Riolu,
Massa.
Scrappy. Those 4 players have an org, and they won't drop down. So I think we have 5 players who are safe. Then we also have Bren, 6 players. Then who else is there? Evon, 7. And I forgot 1 player. Yannick's, yeah. And I think, okay, maybe Yannick's as well, but the other 6 players, or maybe like Yannick's, Evon, and Matt are not safe. Let's say it like that. Those 3 players are not safe, and that they could lose their spot. But I think Muda has a really good chance. He looked very strong in the actual OGL. Then we also had Super Kaluf, who looked very strong. And then also I think someone like Granadi has also a shot, but he hasn't only barely secured himself. So I think Granadi is like my wild pick here.
Your dark horse.
Yeah, and I think that Carl and Muda will like contest the top 5 or something like that, and maybe they can make it happen. What do you think?
I'm very torn about this kind of Combine lineup. One of the main issues I have with it, if we just purely go by performance of Trackmania Grandleague and then Open Grandleague, I would then be saying that Muda and Carl would go up, and say Riolu and Matt would be going down. But the problem is with this format is what we talked about during the regular season. There is people in the bottom 8 and far deep into the bottom 8 who should not be there. Riolu should not be deep in the bottom 8. Bren should not be deep in the bottom 8. Tween should not have been too far down in the bottom 8. We saw on the last step, Tween gathering, I think it was 55. two times his overall point score up until that point. It just goes to show how great a player Tween is. We know how great a player Riolu is. We saw him performing extremely well last season. Yet he's in the Combine second to last from Trackmania Grandleague. But we know he's going to show up in Combine because he has to. He has to avoid the bottom 2 steps. So he has to avoid the bottom 2 positions, basically. That's what he needs to do. That's the thing. If we were to go by how they performed, then I would say, Tween could be at risk, Bren could be at risk, Riolu could be at risk, but we know they're not going to be because we know they're actually going to put in more effort this time. That's essentially what they're going to have to. It's not just a case where they can, I'm not going to get in the prize money, so they can just take it a little bit easier or something like that. They're going to have to perform in this, because if they don't, that's worth a lot of money to them. That's worth a sponsor for some of these players. And a lot of these players are getting paid a lot of money to be part of Trackmania Grandleague, let me tell you, for sure. But in terms of this, I think Matt is almost a surefire pick to be going down. I don't think Matt can outperform this OGL. I think last OGL was a much lower level than the players that are coming into this one. The players are coming into this one seemingly fully motivated and very, very capable. As of course, we've had a kind of reset coming into this season, in the sense that Trackmania 3 or the Trackmania 2020, whatever you wish to call it, has came out and it has introduced a lot of new things, which a lot of people have had to learn. Say, Muda making ice almost his own environment. Whereas before, he wouldn't have had that cutting edge over other people, for example. But he now does have a little bit of a sharp edge to him, a little bit of an advantage that he's able to stretch his legs over some other people. The reactor boosts and so on. Some of the players who have maybe not been playing as much, maybe they've not had the motivation in Trackmania Grandleague, might be a little bit behind. But as I say, the only player I imagine would be Matt having the being out, not necessarily outclassed, but outmatched by some of the players in the Combine. And I definitely think there's going to be one change. But Whether we'll see more, I doubt it. I think a lot of these players in Trackmania Grandleague are all in top orgs. Some of them have direct ties to the orgs. I reckon they're safe as long as they don't get the positions which are going to knock them out, to be honest. That's just simple as I see it.
Yeah, so Rayvout is naming something. Yes, Riolo wants to play TMGL, but he had so many things to do in his real life and some personal issues as well. And I think actually that goes for every of those players right now, but Matt just seems to not hold up with the pace. I mean, Phoebe is saying that the format will be in favor for Matt. Matt, of course, is a very talented player, but I mean, you can already see that on the first and second tech turns. Matt falls a bit behind there already, and I doubt that he can make up a fight for the top 8 in the Combine. That Combine players will be faster than him. But, I mean, he can just have a good day, and maybe he feels motivated now. We don't know. I think it will be a super interesting Combine match in general, that we will see a lot of close fights. And I think that the actual final mode will decide 1 or 2 spots, definitely. And then we're going to see who's going to join the other 8 remaining players. So, it will just be very interesting. I definitely will be casting it. What about you, Paul?
I certainly hope so. I'll wait with more information on that. No doubt I'll know by next week at the very least. But yeah, hopefully we'll be getting involved casting some Combine, and definitely looking forward to that. But I mean, I think that kind of ties us over until next week when we get back to discuss, exactly things like the Combine a little bit more depth, go into more detail for you guys, answer some more questions, and so on and so forth. But right, nice kind of almost rounding off on the hour before Turbo has to run away and do some United matches. But yeah, guys, we'll all catch up with you next week, same time, same place, as always, Tuesdays at 8 p.m. at TM Scotsman on Twitch. And just a reminder to check out a beautiful man over to my left or right, of course, social links. Keep updated on his future casts. And, of course, he will no doubt be involved in the Combine in a casting capacity as well. But that's going to be it from us, everyone. I certainly hope talk about the fact that Turbo is the most beautiful man in Germany. If I had to do that, I'd be here for years. So don't get me started on that. But there you go. there you go. That'll make him.
I'm not gonna quote what he said there.
That's okay. But there we go. I suppose that's a nice way to sign off today's podcast. Yeah, the Mickey Mouse shirt. It's almost a tradition now. I'm reliable for you guys. But everyone, yeah, no Mickey Mouse shirt. So you might be beautiful, but you get a Mickey Mouse shirt. Yeah, we'll wait until next week, guys. We'll see. I'll mail him one.
I'm gonna order one now.
Yeah, enjoy the rest of your night, ladies and gentlemen, and a reminder, of course, to check out esac.gg for future and current tournament needs, and to check out what events are currently going on at the moment, including CPS, which you'll no doubt see both of us playing, hopefully, later on in the week. But everyone, enjoy the rest of your nights, and see you later.